you ever wished you could talk to animals? You can. Welcome to Let's Talk to Animals. As you can see, Pearl's especially eager to welcome you today. Those of you who are watching our YouTube series, those of you who are on our podcast series, you're just going to have to imagine my 22-year-old feathery sidekick perched on my elbow as close to the reflective and shiny screen as he can get to say hello and welcome to today's episode of Let's Talk to Animals. So my name is Shannon. I'm with Animal Love Languages. I'm an animal sensitive and intuitive, and I am delighted to be talking with Tim Link today of Wagging Tails. He's got an amazing story to share and lots of words of wisdom for people of all ages that are interested in interspecies communication. Talking with animals is something that is part of the human birthright. It's so easy to forget that we too are animals. We just have a little bit more of an active brain than most of the other animals we share this world with. And it is our birthright. It's something that we can wake up to. And there's so many reasons why you might want to pursue that a little further. It helps you feel more connected and close to your own animals. It's very useful for talking with the wildlife in your backyard. I love to tell the story of one of my fellow students who used animal communication to talk a wasp out of her house. Haven't managed that myself yet, but definitely it's on my animal communication bucket list. And it's a wonderful way to feel more alive, to feel more connected to everything around us and to our planet. So I really want to encourage you, if you're listening or you're watching today, to open up to what might be possible as you hear Tim speaking today, as you hear his story. Consider whether you may have some of these gifts that he's talking about. Consider whether you may have a secret bucket list item. Maybe you would like to talk with your dog or your cat or your bird or your turtle or the wild animals in your backyard, and just give the idea a chance to breathe and maybe to grow a little and flourish. And with all that said, welcome, Tim. I was so excited when you agreed to be a guest on our podcast and our video series.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for the opportunity. Good to see everybody. Hello.
Good to see everyone. The day I figure out how to have my turtle and my tortoise on will be a big day in our little flock. That'll be really fun. That would require some creative camera work. So I see your book, Wagging Tails, behind us, which I love. Cool. Those of you who are on the podcast will have to check out Tim Link's website. I'm going to tell you now, just in case I forget at the end, although Tim, make sure I don't forget at the end, but it's wagging dash, not the underscore, but the dash, tails, TALES.com. And that's how you can find Tim. So our first question, of course, I'm privileged because I know your story, but people listening and watching do not. So our first question is, when did you first know that talking with animals was even like a thing, was even possible?
Yeah, well, I think that, we'll say I was a little later to the game than some folks. When you start talking to other animal communicators that are out there, oftentimes they'll reflect back, say, well, when I was a small child, I always talked to the animals, or I got the squirrel down from the tree, or rescued the cat, and we had conversations and all that. And I always had a love of animals and an appreciation of animals. But, I spent, did what every all-American kid did. I went to school, I played baseball. I was first in my family to go to college, paid my way through college. And I spent 20 years as a telecom executive, and I traveled the world selling advanced technologies for cellular phones, smartphones. That's you can thank me or blame me if you have a smartphone.
It's pretty well. Maybe this is the reason we can talk today is because of you. So I'm going to go on. I'm going to thank. I'm in team thank.
Good. So that journey paid off. Yeah. And then back in 2004, it was all going to change, unbeknownst to me. Basically, how it happened was my mentor, the late Judy Byers. Judy was coming to the Atlanta area where I'm from, and it was my wife's birthday weekend. And she had heard about Judy teaching this little bitty workshop, this little half-day workshop where it was designed to open your mind and open your heart and connect with the animals and see if you received information and learn how to breathe and how to open and clear your channels. And I was open to all of that, but I thought personally, you know, being a guy, I'm like, okay, well, I'd already bought the card. I got the flowers ordered. Now I got the perfect birthday gift. So I'm set. Let's go to the workshop.
Set.
I'm good for another year. So, and that's what happened. So we went to the workshop and we learned breathing techniques, how to calm ourselves and clear ourselves and open up our channels and our chakras to get them clear. And then opening our heart and our mind to the opportunity to be able to connect with animals. And we had animals, live animals that were there at the workshop, as well as photos of animals that of the participants that were there at the workshop. And we were asked simple questions. So there was about a dozen of us at the workshop. Each one was asked to bring in, you know, 2 or 3 photos of their animals and ask some basic questions. You know, where does Fluffy like to sleep? What color is Spot's bowl? Where does Winnie eat her hay? These type of things. We were to breathe, calm down, connect, and then write down whatever we received, where it was a vision, a thought, a feeling, a smell, a taste. It didn't matter. Write it down. And so we did. And each and every time we went around the room, and keep in mind, only the human companions knew the answers or thought they knew the answers to these questions. So we'd write our answers down and we'd go around and sort of say what we picked up and, you know, and went from there. And each and every time I received information, it was a vision usually, and usually a couple of words. And every time, not only did I receive something, but it was spot on.
Wow.
So it's not hard. You know, I'm not a mathematician here, but a dozen people in a workshop having 4 or 5, you know, animals or questions that per animal, and everyone was, you know, spot on. And like you just said, I thought, wow. And then I thought, okay, you know, and, you know, maybe I should go to Vegas. I'm hot. I'm going to go get me some lottery tickets. I'm do some scratch off. I'm ready to go. I'm spot on today. And then most of all, you know, it popped in my mind. It's like, well, what does this mean? And what am I supposed to do with it? And how does this fit into my world? You know, it wasn't like I could, you know, I was meeting with corporate 500 executives, CEOs, CFOs of major corporations, tech leaders. And, you know, how was I going to say, you know what? You spend like, you know, 20, $30 million with me on this advanced technology that may never see the light of day, but go ahead and spend that. And I'll tell you why Fluffy's no longer using the litter box. Yeah. Now I think
the birthday gift that keeps on giving.
Would be perfect.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I think our world's shifting that way, but it's like a big ship, you know, it's slow to turn.
Shift.
Yeah. So, and I knew it was new, you know, and I didn't know really what to do with it. And so, you know, I worked with it in practice, working with my own animals, later working with friends' animals. Became part of an animal healing ministry at my church. So working that, especially on the grief counseling side, and then working with, became president of a humane society here in the greater Atlanta area, which afforded me more opportunities. And then of course I expanded my gift. I started receiving more words, feelings, colors, pictures, emotions, tastes, smells, however the animal wanted to communicate with me is what they shared back with me. And at the same time, I was doing things like I became a Reiki master. So I started working with Reiki with animals, shelter animals, and other animals. And so it broadened and expanded my opportunities. And finally, after doing that for about 3 years, close to 3 years, word got out. Word got out about what I did. I had some success stories, some public, you know, some PR things came out. I found some lost animals, which I'm very well known for. And, you know, I really had to make a decision. I had to go within myself, had to ask my guides and my spirit, and what was, you know, really was this all about? Was it something I need to continue to, you know, keep quiet about and sort of do on the side and continue my, you know, long-standing telecom career that I built? Or was this really what I was supposed to do? Is this my purpose? And should I go and let everybody know? Yeah, my message came through loud and clear. And immediately I typed up my resignation as soon as I got back from church that day, and submitted it and dug up the website Wagging Tails, because it's all about the tails they tell, not the tails they wag. And and away we go. And I've been doing it ever since. So we're going on 17 years of doing this and 14 years as a business. and something new and exciting every day.
That's fantastic. And you
Yeah.
touched on two of the real hot button topics that often end up being the doorway through which people experience animal communication for the first time. And one is when an animal gets lost, and the second is when an animal passes. For me, it was actually the first time I connected with an animal communicator was when my tortoise wandered away, got lost. And the second, and I want to come back to this, but I was very surprised to learn that not all animal communicators work with lost animals. So that would be something interesting we can talk about. But also the second time my mother's soul dog was passing, and I purchased a session for my mom and dad to talk with their dog, and it just shifted the whole dynamic. I mean, we went from crying hysterically to feeling calm and centered and very connected to one another in the heart. And so, you know, a lot of times these animals come into our lives and they open us up so much, and we just don't realize it until they either go missing or they pass. And that's sometimes when some of these new possibilities and even awakenings sometimes, when people discover, wait a minute, my favorite part in an animal communication session is always when the person says, I knew they were going to say that. I'm like, oh, let's talk about that. How do you think you knew?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I guess the biggest question, and I know because I came to it a little bit later in life, I turned 50 this year. And so, you know, I spent the first half-ish of my life. I'm no mathematician either. How about that? The half-ish of my life, you know, being the person who hired animal communicators. Certainly never thought that I would be able to. I thought those were the special people, and I just kind of wished that I could do what they did. But I truly just was very open to it and very much believed and still believe. You know, but I remember waiting on the other end of the phone and just being like, oh, I can't wait till they tell me what my animal is thinking, you know, or what my animal wants, or it's just like, it's like magic. So I am going to go out on a limb and just guess that the number one question that our viewers and listeners probably have for you is, what is it like to talk to an animal?
Well, you know, at first it's quite scary, bizarre, thrilling, everything rolled into one. As a matter of fact, that you mentioned on the intro about how to control it, and or we were talking offline actually about that, how you control it. Do you always walk around and you're hearing animals all the time? That drive you crazy. And the first day after the workshop, that happened. I couldn't sleep. I didn't get a wink of sleep because the portal was open and animals were communicating. It wasn't dramatic things, you know. It wasn't necessarily, you know, the great injustices going on with animals in the world. It was just conversation because they knew the portal was open. So I couldn't wait till the sun came up, and I knew Judy was an early riser, so Judy Byer. So I contacted Judy and said, "Hey, Judy, this is great stuff, but if it's going to be like this always, I don't want to get it out of me. Take it away.
Turn it off.
Yeah,
Show me where the switch is.
Yeah, just take it away.
I can't find the manual."
Yeah, exactly. There's no manual. And
That's
she
awesome.
said, "Oh, hon, it won't always be this way. And even if it was, there's no way for me to take it away from you. So we just have to learn to develop it and work with it, and turn it on when you need to, shut it off when you don't. And if there's a message that desperately needs to get through, perhaps you'll pick up on that." And so that's one of the early lessons I learned. But it's interesting, it's exciting, it's heartfelt, it's heart tugging, it's tiring, it's everything, because you know, you're not only, if you're doing it for your own animals, that's a challenge because your own kids are the toughest ones. There's no doubt about it.
Sure are.
So
they sure are.
That is a challenge.
Yeah.
And then you've got the challenge, if you're going to do this on a professional or semi-professional basis, if it's going to be how you pursue it. It is a business, so you have to have business acronym and savvy and PR ability and marketing to be successful. And even if you're doing it on the side and donating the money back to rescues, which I donate a lot of my time and tithings to rescue organizations, it's still tiring because you're dealing with calming yourself, clearing yourself, getting yourself to a spot in space that perhaps you don't usually get to. And then you have to connect with the animal, and then you have to absorb all that energy back, communicate that back. And then after it's all said and done, you got to clear yourself because there's perhaps the next animal. So it is, I remember early on when doing this, I used to attend a lot of rescue fairs and church fairs, these type of things, where, I would do like a 10-minute reading for someone that brought their animal there, and I'd give all the money back to the church or to the rescue. And I do them one after another. This would go on for like all afternoon, and I was hyped. I was good. I was in the zone. Everything was fantastic. And I remember one of the first ones, I got to the car and I called my wife and I said, "Hey, I'm on my way home." She goes, "How'd it go?" I said, "It went great. I feel good. I'm ready to go." Well, truthfully, it was about a 40-minute drive back home. And I hate to say it, I don't remember much of that drive, because at that point I was totally wiped out and zoned. I guess I was in auto mode, which is not a good way to do it. But yeah, so you have to learn over the years to know when to shut it off, how to control it, how to open yourself up to it, how to deal with the emotions and they're coming from the animal, as well as if you're working with a human companion.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to think about, especially if someone is listening or watching today that's interested, because just like there are introverts and extroverts in the world, when you think about having conversations back to back all day, and carrying that energy of each interaction through to the next and the next and the next, and some people get recharged by having conversations all day long. I happen to be an introvert, so I tend to need alone time, and I need time between each connect to recharge. But then you have to factor in the deeper level that you're in this kind of altered state. You're in a sensory world. You're meeting the animal rather than asking the animal to adapt to our most overt method of communication, which is thoughts and words. We're meeting the animal more where they are, and we're really making that effort to, you mentioned earlier, you see a vision, you hear something, you smell or taste something, which can be particularly interesting if it's never happened to you, because sometimes the things that animals think smell or taste good are not the same thing that we like, right?
There's a lot of sniffing butts going around. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, interesting, right? The things you didn't know were on your bucket list. Exactly. But, really just learning how to, my teacher calls it managing your energy. Learning how to manage your energy and understanding the importance of refocusing, disconnecting from one communication before entering the next, and keeping each one a sacred space between yourself and the animal that you're talking with and their person. So, and sometimes there's not even a person there if you're talking with wild animals. If you're talking with an animal that's been relinquished and is waiting to be rehomed, there are boundary things to consider. There are, what feels right. And there's not always somebody handy to ask. So of course, my next question is, how has talking to animals changed your life? And rather than me going on, nobody's tuning in to listen to me. I'd love to ask you that question, because there's so much in what you just shared.
Right. Well, I tell you, it's a totally different world. I think on the exterior and the interior, I feel the same. I act the same, quite childlike, and some would say.
That's good.
But everything, yeah, from that aspect, if I didn't tell you what I did, or I didn't communicate with your animals, et cetera, you probably wouldn't know any difference hopefully any difference from where I was 20 years ago. But internally, from a spiritual standpoint and from a heart standpoint, it changed my life. And then from a personal standpoint, just in a business standpoint, changed it dramatically. I mean, you have to realize that animal communications come a long way over the years. I've been doing it for 17 years. There's others who've been doing it longer than that. And even in the time I've been doing it, it was just really started hitting a stride a little bit. There was, some names on the list. People have been doing it for a while. And then now it's really growing. People are starting to accept a little bit more, or willing to open themselves up to it. And I think part of it's because it's been around and been proven, and others we're just we're needing that information. But it's also, there's sort of the tough side to it as well. I learned very early on that people come into your life for a reason, season, or lifetime. And we've heard that. And that's
Beautiful.
absolutely true. I mean, I had people once, I said, hey, I'm leaving my corporate executive job to go talk to some animals. They're like,
Yeah,
what?
buddy.
What? He's gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
What do maybe we'll leave Tim alone for a while. Some friends that I've known for a lifetime went away. They didn't vibrate at that level. They couldn't comprehend. They weren't on that journey with me. So I had to learn to, thank them for being part of my journey up to that point and then move on. But the plus side is more like-minded people, more open-minded people, and people that needed my help appeared. So it's that way. Family members as well, they'll try to justify it. They'll say, oh, okay, you're a dog trainer. No, no, no. Well, I'm not. Yeah, you're a dog trainer, or you're like that guy on TV that talks, that does those dog. No, well, I'm really not. Okay, yeah, okay. In my mind, I have to
Yeah.
spend Christmas with you, so in my mind, you train dogs. And I'm like, okay, well, if that works for you, that's fine with me. So it is a major, major shift in your thoughts, your heart, your opening, how you go about handling life, and but it's joyous and it's heartfelt, like I said, and it could be very wearing on you too. So you have to be aware of that if you're going to be doing this. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not all
It truly
giggles
isn't.
and joys. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and animals have a very present moment perspective that can be healing, especially healing in times of deep grief, and just very difficult decisions, and the moments when all of our adulting skills have somehow managed to disappear with one another and they refuse to come back. And animals I feel like, and my teacher always talks about how animals are master teachers, and they're such masters of unconditional love that they're willing to stick through us, stick with us.
Right,
Stick with
right.
that. Let me just think about that for a minute. Stick with us. Yes, English is my first language. Yes. Ow. I'm sorry. Those of you who are listening don't know that Pearl just corrected my grammar by biting me on the nose, right? So they're always teaching us, and they're always loving us. But
Yeah.
man, sometimes we walk through fire together for that relationship. And I love what you touched on, which is not everybody in our space is going to be, as you called it, vibrating at the same frequency. They're not going to be on board with our decisions. However, the trade-off is, as you again mentioned, meeting a whole new group of people and animals that are so amazing, and realizing I'm not an anomaly.
Right.
I fit in this other life in certain ways, but I didn't fit in this other life in certain ways. And I'm finding, for me, the biggest aha moment of my relatively short journey when compared to 17 years
I feel
has
old.
been that I've felt parts of myself wake up, like, for the first time. And at 50, you kind of think you know yourself pretty
Mm.
well, but the truth is there are parts of me that I had no idea were there. So I'm like, hey, how are you?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, you,
yeah.
you touched upon how animals live in that present moment. And I tell people all the time that I think animals and humans alike, we have a purpose. There's a reason for us to be here. It's not all a grandiose purpose. A well-known friend of mine had once said that, Shirley MacLaine, and Shirley had said, why is everybody when they're reincarnated coming back as Cleopatra and Caesar?
It's a good question. I
Yeah, why
hadn't
aren't
thought
they
of
be?
that.
Yeah, why can't they just be Joe the janitor, or just a farmer or something? So I always take that to heart, and it's very true. We select a body, we come back with a purpose, and we try every day to fulfill that purpose. The difference is animals do live in that present moment unless we drag them back into the past moment, either our own or theirs, and they work on their purpose every single day, and they fulfill that purpose, or that body doesn't doesn't fulfill it, and then they'll come back around again. But they work and focus on that present moment and their purpose every day, where we sort of walk around with life trying to figure out why we're here. And then we climb that ladder and realize, is that all there is? And so then we spend
Right.
thousands of dollars in therapy trying to figure out, why am I here truly? And so we just look at our animals and follow their lead an animal's life, lead a dog's life, as we'll say. Then we'll learn those lessons earlier, and we'll find out why we're here, and we'll live a more fulfilling life.
Mhm, mhm. So that actually is a very, very smooth segue into my next question, which, I'm just, again, going to go out on the limb and assume that anyone who's listening to the podcast or watching this series is interested on some level. And we mentioned in the beginning that, you don't have to have a burning desire or even a mild desire to do this as a profession in order to just gain life-changing impact from connecting with animals. But let's just say we've got somebody out there who's listening or watching, and they just want to get started. They just want to experience it for themselves. And they don't have a reason. They don't need a reason. They just want to have that first experience. What advice would you give them?
Well, listen to this podcast and watch this YouTube
Listening
video.
to this
There you
podcast is
go.
a good one. Love it.
There's great resources out there, and a lot of communicators that have been doing this for a while are either have their own shows or they've been on shows. I mean, I host animal rights on Pet Life Radio, and I've been doing that for quite a few years, and it's very, very successful. But it's not necessarily about animal communication. It's more about talking to authors and writers and those folks that have written about animals or have animals as a key character in their book. And that goes out to Pet Life Radio, iHeartRadio, and all those wonderful places. So if you're wanting to find out more about it, just get online, check it out. You can check out, I've been on TV and radio. I've been blessed. We'll just put it that way. My mug has been shown many, many times. So if you want to look at my stuff, you can, or they're yours, and there's plenty of great people out there. So get your toes wet, get familiar with it, and then work with a couple of animal communicators, see what resonates with you. Find, one that seems to really touch you and get you. It doesn't have to read every perfect thing. They don't need to know spots, where he likes to hide his bone. You just have to have that resonation and be able to connect with them. And then take a class or workshop. And this doesn't necessarily, here's a cheap marketing plug. I have an online workshop. It's a 4-part audio workshop.
Ask you about that.
Yes,
yep.
it's you can go to my website, wagging-tales, TALES.com.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, and you find out a little bit more about how to communicate with animals. It's a 4-part workshop, includes my lovely voice throughout, so that's a plus. And I also have some couple of professional meditations that I recorded professionally, and those are on there as guided meditations. So you can go do that if you want to study at home in your own pace and your own time, or you can take a class or a workshop in person, or now, Zoom is hot as heck right now, right? So
I know. When did Zooming become a verb? Zoom becomes a verb. Zooming is a verb. We're Zooming again today.
That's right. That's right. So there's plenty of opportunities. And I think the thing I tell people that you don't have to be a professional. If you want to, you can. If you can do this on the side, you can do it for your own benefit. You can open your mind, your heart, and the idea to be able to communicate with the animals. But the key thing is the twofold: do it, practice, and then open your mind to it. And I think the one lesson I teach, whether I'm doing an in-person workshop or a video workshop or my audio workshops, it's a matter of trust. And it's not trust in what you're doing, but trusting what you receive. And I think that's the biggest probably roadblock to people being able to truly communicate with the animals is when we get the information, whether it's word, color, feeling, emotion, taste, smell, whatever it may be, we doubt it. It's like, is that real? And then we start to overanalyze it. Next thing you know, we've talked ourselves out of it. So you open yourself up, you connect, you get information, and trust that information is real. And that's going to give you your best opportunity to be able to do this, enjoy it, and have some fun and success with it.
Well, I love that. I mean, I started out by reading books, and I want to talk a little bit more about your books before we end today. But, my first experience of animal communication was when I hired an animal communicator, and it was an accuracy and authenticity I couldn't explain. I just knew that this person was tuning in with my animal because everything she was delivering back to me was so spot on. Just, it's not only, the right information, but in the tone of voice and with the flavor and the character of my individual animal whom I knew so well. And so that was my first, and when my tortoise went missing, and you had mentioned you work with missing animals too, not one, not two, but three different communicators all told me exactly where to look for her, and they were all right because they all told me the same place, and that really confirmed it for me. I was like, this stuff really works. And the other thing I'll say, that's a great entree. And not only that, but you'll get some really good information about your animal, and you'll get to ask some questions, that burning questions that, you've been just wrestling with, and you'll be able to communicate some things to your animal that really can deepen your relationship. And the second piece is just to think back to any time in your life when you've ever had a hunch or just a gut instinct or just a knowing and you couldn't explain it. And I'm gonna just take a guess here and assume that everybody who's listening can think of at least one time in your life that that's happened to you and you turned out to be right. That is the same way animal communication learns. If you've ever had just a knowing or gut instinct or a hunch and it's been right, you already know that you can talk to animals. It's just, it's like, we all went to school for whatever our respective language was, and we went for years, and we probably went so many times to so many different, we know how to conjugate everything and how to stack a sentence and punctuation, all that. We didn't get an ounce of training in this interspecies language in our formal schooling. There's lots of training out there, and Tim, your course is an awesome idea. It's a great, 4 different modules sounds manageable. You're not making this tremendous commitment here. You're just, slicing out a little bit of time for a month, maybe once a week to just try it out and see what happens. And, just kind of give yourself the opportunity. So if you right now are thinking of one time that you've had a hunch or a knowing or an instinct that turned out to be right, then maybe you're thinking about taking Tim's course too, or reading one of his books. You've got Wagging Tails behind you, and you've also got a new one. Am I correct?
Yeah, we've got, let's see if I can pan it in here.
It
It's Talking with Dogs and Cats.
There you go. So,
yeah. So
that's another way to learn.
Exactly.
I started by reading books.
That's it. Talking with Dogs and Cats sort of has some great stories, real life stories of what I went through and my animals in particular. But it teaches you, the first part is those sort of top 20 questions if you got a dog or a cat that you're going to run into, like why does the cat stop using the litter box, or why does my dog always bark at the door, and how do I handle that? And the other part talks about animal communication, how to open yourself up to joining the conversation and having a better life and a richer bond with your animals. And this, though it focuses on dogs and cats, it's all animals, like you mentioned, tortoises. I work with aquatic animals. I've worked with zoos, sanctuaries, you name it. And with the work that I do, especially with the lost animal work, I don't know where they're going to call from or email from, and I don't know what kind of animal they're going to have. So it could be, every time I think, I've handled every animal. No. And then, of course, every animal is unique. So there you go. And then Wagging Tails is the book that tells the stories, simple stories. It's actually good for young adults and children alike, because they're just short, sweet little stories of things I went through with the animals I worked with in my very early days when this first started. So it's a good way to just sort of have a light read and realize there's some interesting stories, some fun stories. And and there's even a praying mantis in there. You mentioned about how you could talk to the bugs and the getting rid of the flies and mosquitoes and whatever's in the house. Yeah, there's a praying mantis conversation in there.
Yeah. So if you just have a few minutes just before bed or at night, and you just have a little time to read. I love books that have short chapters and short stories, because a lot of times by the time I get to the end of the day, it's like, I know I can't just go from work to sleep, but I also don't have a huge amount of energy left. So that sounds absolutely perfect. So definitely encourage you. Again, it's wagging-tails.com. Tim, thank you again. Your website has an e-newsletter that people can sign up for. You can find all of your books and your course online. And I'm assuming, although I didn't see this personally, the links to your radio shows.
Yeah, the link. Yeah,
Yeah, go
exactly.
ahead.
So the links to the radio show Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio
Okay.
is on there. So that'll click there. You can listen to all the episodes and listen to your favorite authors that write about animals.
Oh,
The
cool.
Yeah, so the books, the audio meditations are on there. It can be purchased. The workshops on there, and just information. And I do, private consultations. I work with people that have
Mhm.
questions about their animals, emotional, physical, mental challenges with their animals. I work grief counseling side. If you're going to have an animal that is getting ready to make their transition or has, how do you work through that? And then, of course, the lost animal work. I work with people around the world, hopefully reuniting them with whatever animal that they're taking care of or it's part of their life. So it's there's a lot on there. So if you get a
There's a
chance, take a look
lot
at it.
going on.
That's
There's a
right.
lot going on at wagging-tails.com. And I'm looking forward to continuing to explore as well. Tim, thank you so much for
My
donating your time and the generosity of spending some time chatting with me and our listeners and viewers. And hopefully we can circle back. Maybe we can do a special episode just on lost animals, because that's a huge one.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this mystery area, and I've got so many questions. So maybe we can circle back around at a later date
Sounds
and come
good.
back for a part 2. But
Part
for
2 sounds
now,
good.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tim Link with wagging-tails.com. My name is Shannon. I'm with animallovelanguages.com. My supervisor is biting me again. It's time for his evening rice. We have so enjoyed being a part of your world today. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for giving us a little bit of your time and your energy and sharing our love for animals. And we look forward to continuing to connect each month and maybe even each week as this podcast and YouTube series grows. Thank you again, Tim, and look forward to chatting soon.